Welcome to the Mature Male. I'm your host, Wes, a practicing psychotherapist with a focus on helping people find meaning and direction, heal from trauma, and mature through practical guidance and wisdom. The ability to sincerely apologize and admit when you're wrong might be one of the most underrated life skills. Research shows that effective apologies can repair damaged trust, strengthen relationships, and facilitate personal growth. Yet, many people, especially men, struggle to apologize in ways that actually heal rather than further complicate situations. Today, we're exploring the art of a genuine apology, why it's difficult, what makes it effective, and how developing this capacity can transform both your relationships and your relationship with yourself. So let's get into it. We'll start with framing the approach of an apology as a skill rather than an inherent trait. It's not that some people are born better at apologizing and others not. This is something you actively have to work at getting better at. We'll explore the psychology behind effective apologies, examine the common barriers that prevent meaningful accountability, and offer practical guidance for apologizing in ways that create genuine healing and connection. What if genuine apologies aren't signs of weakness, but actually among the most powerful forms of strength and integrity available to us? Segment 1. The apology paradox, how vulnerability creates strength. The apparent vulnerability of admitting you are at fault paradoxically creates psychological strength and relational trust rather than diminishing status or power. We think to ourselves, if I admit that I'm wrong, then I am exposing the wrongness, which will be interpreted as mistrustful, because that person will see that I am wrong and not right. So therefore, why should they trust me if what they see is the wrong? That's more or less what we tell ourselves in a moment where we have trouble admitting we're wrong. What we know to be true is that trust is built on the visibility and predictability of who you are as a person. When you admit you're wrong, you are exposing not just an action, but a part of you that is underdeveloped, but nonetheless is real and it's there. By apologizing, you are revealing that reality within yourself in a way where that person now can predict that that part of you is actively playing a role in your life. The lie is that if we withhold, if we hide, if we minimize our faults, our shortcomings, and our shadow self, then we will be more accepted, more lovable, more connected with others, because why not give them the best part of ourselves in a way that has the best chance at being accepted? But our ability to let people into the real of our lives, warts and all, as Richard Rohr says, builds trust through visibility and predictability. It's not that that person will start to predict that you will continually repeat that wrong or that you are nothing more than that wrong. It simply helps them account for that wrong being a part of who you are. We know that when we can predict who someone is, how they show up, even if that prediction is mostly painful or negative, that is less threatening to our brains than unpredictability. This is why when we receive bad news out of nowhere that is shocking, it traumatizes us more than if we could predict it and see it coming. Because when we can predict something, we can prepare for it. So therefore, the ability to apologize and reveal your wrong allows the other person that you've wronged to properly prepare and understand, okay, this isn't excusable, but it's understandable. I know who this person is. I know what they struggle with, and I know what they're working on. And that builds a trust with that person. It also helps you trust them more, because what is happening in that moment where you choose to apologize is you are putting to the test that person's ability to forgive you and move on from the situation. If you try to apologize and that person responds with judgment, holding of love, and holding that wrong over your head, they are not trustworthy. They are not a safe place for you. But you don't know any of that until you put them to the test, in a sense. Deep down, you are scared of being rejected, of being undervalued or misunderstood, or being judged, to be seen for your wrongs and only the parts of you that are unidealistic. When we apologize, we are giving that person a chance to reflect the deeper truth and beauty and rightness about who we are, that allows us to share something as it is, but also when we confess it and we share that wrong and apologize for it, it shows our sentiment of the desire to make it right. If we don't apologize, that person can safely assume we don't feel bad about what we've done, nor do we want to change the wrong in a way where we don't repeat it. If you do not apologize, that narrative never changes in that person's mind, and rightfully so. Why should it? If you choose not to apologize, you show you are not remorseful and you do not want to change. But it's paradoxical because it can feel weak, because what we are sharing is weak. We are exposing our weakness, and it can feel humiliating to come to terms with the full reality of our shortcomings, how much we have failed. But it does not diminish your status or power. It actually reveals the proper level that it should be at. We believe all these narratives in our minds that we should be at a certain place. We should be able to overcome this. We shouldn't have to apologize or make up for things. When we use the word should, that is a projected expectation that is not grounded in reality, but in our minds alone. We have to confront that through the action of apologizing. And when we have genuine accountability, it enhances rather than threatens healthy self-concept, meaning the wrong that we apologize for loses its power when we say it out loud, because it moves from this is who I am to this is what I've done. It puts a limit and a boundary, a constraint around the wrong to categorize it as an action, not an identity. The accountability is not holding you accountable to only fess up to what you've done wrong. The true accountability is holding you accountable to be the person you know yourself to be and who you say you want to be. If you are someone that says, I want to be just and wise and humble and mature and loving, whatever virtue you want to become, it is going to take a consistent partner or support system to reflect when you do not live up to who you say you want to be. The apology allows you to see where you're actually at, not where you wish you were, and it helps restore the capacity to become more than the shortcoming of what you've done wrong. Because when we admit we're wrong, then that allows us to be open to knowing how to be right or do right in a way that helps us be less likely to repeat the wrong. If we never apologize, we never admit there's anything to work on, to grow in, or to progress for. That is pride. That is staying stagnant. And while it feels good in the moment, it doesn't make you a better person. Your ability to apologize, to be open to being held accountable, is the only way you will grow into the person that you want to be. And that accountability is not a jail warden punishing you for what you've done wrong. It is a loving mentor, guide, support, like a mirror, that simply reveals when you've done it wrong, allows you the opportunity to be sorry about it and to not repeat it. Until we acknowledge what's wrong, we don't realize our blind spots, the areas that we need to grow in. Our ability to welcome being wrong, welcome feedback, even criticism, helps us mature, because we are able to see the truth in things. As hard as it is to accept, The apology acknowledges what is true and how you did not live up to that in a moment. But it then allows you to see the truth in a deeper manner that gives you a higher chance of living out of the truth instead of the lie next time. This builds a fortitude of self because then you are able to not over personalize the need to apologize. It's normal. Everyone is wrong. But this is very cultural. I'll get into that later as far as how different cultures perceive apologizing and taking things personal. So let's talk about the relationship between an effective apology and psychological maturity. How the capacity to acknowledge mistakes reflects secure identity and emotional regulation. Our ability to apologize in an effective way shows how mature we actually are. Just because you have aged does not mean you have matured. Apologizing is a skill, and as you mature, your ability to prioritize apologizing as a core skill goes hand in hand with the maturity. As you learn to apologize more effectively, you will mature more. And as you mature more, a sign of that maturity is that you are learning to apologize more effectively. The most mature people most quickly and honestly acknowledge the mistakes. And they can acknowledge the mistakes in that manner and that process and timing because they know the mistake or the shortcoming is not a reflection of who they are as a person. They have a secure identity. When you know you are right at the core of who you are, that you are confident, that you are full of goodness and light, then you realize that mistakes will happen because you have limited understanding and perception as a human, but by no means is that a reflection of who you are. And when you make apologizing a habit, just like anything, it starts to become normalized. Instead of seeing it as something you do randomly, very occasionally, as a threat that feels overwhelming, if you consistently do it, it refines you. It becomes like working out. Instead of trying to push yourself really hard one time and then needing to nap all day because you can't handle the amount of energy you exerted, you can be disciplined about moving your body daily in a way that feels incrementally helpful. Also, this helps with emotional regulation. When you are resistant to apologizing, it's usually out of a place of being angry, or call it frustration, aggravation. You're defensive, you're tense, you're anxious, whatever it is. And if you are not used to apologizing, you will dysregulate quickly and go into an extreme fight or flight mode that is distress at its core because you have not let out those emotions and gotten used to expressing those emotions constantly and consistently. And it's like shaking up a soda bottle and it's spewing everywhere because you have held that tension for so long. If you just randomly unscrewed the bottle one time, it's going to pop. Instead of slowly turning the cap day after day to alleviate the pressure, the tension, the overwhelm of the emotion, and being able to effectively, through a calculated and controlled manner, express your emotion. When you are emotionally regulated, you are able to more effectively apologize. Those go hand in hand. When you are in a dysregulated state of heightened stress, your ability to effectively apologize drastically decreases. When you are calm, grounded, clear-minded, and able to healthily express whatever emotion in that moment, that articulate and effective apology goes hand in hand there. The more we mature, the more we want accountability, the more we want feedback, the more we want to get better, the more we want to be held to the person we know ourselves to be. If you look at a sports trainer, those who are most serious about developing in whatever sport they play have the highest paid trainers who are most involved, who are most hands-on, who are most engaged and challenging. Even the professionals want to know how can they get better. Meanwhile, many of us amateurs, when we play sports in an intramural league or with our family, we can get defensive. We don't want to see that we are not good at something. We don't want feedback. Why? Because we actually don't care about growing or getting better that much in that particular sport, understandably. We can see apologizing as the same as the mode of training in which it improves the sport of our relationships. The more relationship means to you, the more willing you are to apologize, to make it right, to be held accountable, to continually improve in that relationship. That shows how much you care about it and how much you care about growing in truth and wisdom. As you do, it develops the capacity to do it more and more. You practice it more, you get better, it deepens your capacity to handle it. So you work your way up. You start with apologizing with a little thing. Sorry I was late. All the way to working it up to apologizing for a more serious matter. Sorry that I lied to you or that I judged you. You can see it like a ladder of grievances that goes up. So let's talk about some myth-busting common misconceptions about apologies. Effective apologies aren't about self-flagellation or excessive guilt, but about a clear acknowledgement and repair. We have a common misconception that the more we beat ourselves up, the more we are shameful or guilty, and the more dramatized, the more externalized it seems we are sorry, then the more we mean it. But this type of expression can often be a defense mechanism of not healthily expressing the apology. Anything done in excessive expression is done out of a false sense of self or perception in the situation. The effective apology is done clearly in a way that repairs the relationship. If you have wronged someone and you are bending over backwards, doing cartwheels, apologizing, saying, "Oh, I feel so bad," ironically, you are dismissing the remorse that needs to be acknowledged from the action of how you've hurt someone else. And you put the focus on you and on how you feel hurt or bad. I feel so bad that I did that I caused that. And instead of honoring the effect of the hurt that you caused in another person by putting the focus on the action that you did in a way that shows you understand why you were wrong and how it affected that person, you turn the focus on you. You don't really want to apologize. You want an opportunity to make it look like you care, when actually you are self-preserving. You are selfish in that moment. Simply own up to the wrong and ask yourself, how can this apology repair and make right this relationship? What do I need to acknowledge that was wrong, that needs to be made right? And what does it look like to make it right? This is productive accountability instead of unproductive shame spirals. It's going about it more objectively. Let's say I'm supposed to meet my wife for dinner at 7 and I show up at 7:15. If I show up and she's waiting on me and she says, "We were supposed to meet at 7 and at 7:15, you're late." If I go right into, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry there was so much traffic, but honestly, I can't believe that I did this to you. You're probably so upset and I deserve to not go to dinner with you because I was so late. I obviously don't care. I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. Let me buy you an appetizer." That is an unproductive shame spiral. Instead of simply acknowledging, "You know what? You're right. I told you I would be here at 7 p.m. and I was here 15 minutes late, and I apologize for that, for not respecting your time or properly preparing enough in a way where I could fulfill the promise that I made to you. I'll do better." You see, the difference is I'm just acknowledging the action, where I went wrong, how I need to make it right, and moving forward what to expect. See it like a court reporter that's simply objectively writing down what is said, what was wrong, what needs to be made right. You're just going through that line by line in order. Another misconception about apologizing is that it diminishes leadership, authority, or respect. You may think, as a leader, admitting that you're wrong shows that you are weak, untrustworthy, not competent in your skills, not good enough to lead others because you yourself are wrong. And that if you reveal your wrongs, that people will see you as weak, untrustworthy, and not worth following. This is a lie. Going back to the psychology of trust, When the people that work for you see that you have the ability to be wrong, it puts them at ease, because guess what? They're going to be wrong too. They want to know that mistakes are not just a part of growing. They are the core essential way in which we grow. Being able to make mistakes within reason and properly own up to those in a way where you learn from them and move on is the way that you will get employees to perform best. If you are an employee and you see your boss admit when he or she is wrong, then that shows a respect and an understanding of what matters most, which is not this overly confident lack of admitting that you're wrong, not making mistakes, feeling pressured, walking on a tightrope of day-to-day actions that feels like if you make one wrong move, it's detrimental. That level of subtle stress in a company, in a group, in a team creates exhaustion, mistrust, and ultimately people do not perform better because they don't feel as safe. When someone feels safe enough to mess up and they're held accountable in an effective way, they will ultimately mess up less and perform better for you. If you are a leader in any sort of capacity, practice admitting fault. It actually shows your credibility and effectiveness. It doesn't undermine it. Your ability to admit you're wrong allows you the chance to do it right next time. If you consistently apologize, you consistently see the truth, then you're able to implement that truth more and more. You actually become more effective, more credible. If you never apologize, you are the least effective and least credible person in the room. Change your mindset from credibility looking like how much you do right, how much knowledge you know, and how certain you are, into the ability to see life as it is in a realistic manner, admitting what you don't know, because that is far greater than what you could ever know, and admitting what you can learn or would be helpful to learn instead of doubling down on what you already know in certainty, but welcoming uncertainty as your teacher and moving forward. It also makes people have more compassion and empathy for you. If you lead with, yeah, I didn't know that, and that's what led to my mistake, that is going to be a lot more accepted than, no, I knew that, and it's not that big a deal. You see the difference? No one really wants to sit there and listen to someone lie to their face or deny the truth. That's not just annoying, it's disrespectful. Call it how it is. Start with yourself. Do the honest reflection and understanding. Then admit and apologize in a way that sets the tone for the environment you're leading. Segment 2, real life applications for this. The elements of an effective apology. We have to start with clear acknowledgement without qualification. The crucial foundation of specifically naming what went wrong without minimizing, justifying, or explaining it away. We'll talk about the difference between complete and partial acknowledgement. When we apologize, it should be seen as a simple and straightforward admission of what went wrong, how it affected the person in going wrong, how we can make it right, and what to expect moving forward. We don't make excuses, which is qualifying that. Going back to the example with my wife, if I am late, I'm not mentioning that I got stuck in traffic or I had to take a work call or there was no parking. All those things are lies in the sense of they are avoiding the full truth that there is no excuse. Therefore, there is nothing I should say that should justify the apology. If I am late, I am just late. I should not have been late, period. In the rare case that you have an emergency, then you can say that. But 99% of the time, the apology is the clear acknowledgement. What went wrong? Call it how it is. Don't minimize it. Oh, I was just 10 minutes late. Don't justify it. It was because of traffic, or explaining it away. I've never been here before, so it took me a while to find it. Do a complete acknowledgement. I often struggle with this. I'll give you an example in my own life and my marriage. If I'm in conflict with my wife and she said she's going to do something, she hadn't done it yet, and I get aggravated, raise my voice, and judge her, say, why haven't you done that? And she tells me, hey, don't talk to me like that. That's not the way to go about this. And I respond saying, okay, I'm sorry. That's partial acknowledgement. It's just almost no acknowledgement. The complete acknowledgement in that example would be, I am sorry for not trusting you, for micromanaging you, and for speaking to you in a tone and at a volume that is inappropriate. That is a complete acknowledgement. Within an apology, there are usually multiple facets of wrongs within the bigger wrong. We need to acknowledge start to finish, front to back, end to end, everything that we are wrong for. Now, this doesn't mean that you make up things to be wrong for or extend it more than it is. Again, see it for what it is and for what it isn't. But make sure you do not overlook it. It is like when you're younger, you do something wrong, you don't feel bad about it, and your parents say you're sorry, and then you just quickly go, I'm sorry, as you roll your eyes and look to the side. That's not a sign of true apology. That's partial acknowledgement. We're just apologizing so we can get that person off our back, so we can move on, so we cannot feel as bad. But that is weak. That is disrespectful. It takes courage to fully see your faults as they are, but that is the way that is most respectful and is most trustworthy and will most quickly and effectively repair a rupture in the relationship. Let's talk about the difference between genuine remorse and impact recognition. How communicating authentic regret and demonstrating understanding of the impact on others creates the emotional foundation for repair. When we are remorseful, it allows us to have true empathy, to imagine and truly understand how our wrongs negatively impacted that person. When we recognize the impact that it's had, it connects and opens up the other person to hear what we have to say. In the example again with my wife, it would look like me saying, I regret checking my work emails another 15 minutes because doing that made me late leaving the house and therefore late getting here. And those emails weren't as important as being on time and spending that time with you. And I'm sorry. That's authentic regret. Understanding the impact in that example would be, I realize that you're probably frustrated, you feel disrespected because you took the time and energy to be on time, and now you're waiting. And we don't get that much time together during the week, and here we are delayed and you having to wait on me in a way that you didn't choose to do that to me. So I can understand that you're frustrated, that you're hurt by my lack of prioritizing you in this situation. An exercise you can do here is to imagine the roles are reversed and the other person wronged you in the way that you wronged them. How would you feel? What emotions would come up for you? What thoughts? What would you need and want to hear that would help you feel valued and understood? That would make you want to repair the relationship with that person. Try that exercise and then give that to someone else. Common apology pitfalls. The non-apology apology. How phrases like, I'm sorry you feel that way, or mistakes were made, function as accountability avoidance rather than genuine apology. We'll examine how the subtle language patterns that undermine apology effectiveness play out. When someone says, I'm sorry you feel that way, that is fake empathy that is disassociative in nature. It is minimizing how someone feels by seeing it as worth apologizing over. I'm sorry you feel that way. It's a defense mechanism. It's putting the focus on the other person. It's making it seem like their feelings or emotional responses to the situation are not valid, or mistakes were made is a generic statement that does not acknowledge the clear wrongness and negative impact on that person and your relationship. When someone says these things, they are simply avoiding responsibility. They are defending their ego and putting the onus on the other person instead of themselves. Examining those language patterns helps you see how you are undermining the apology effectiveness. You are also using the words "I'm sorry" in a misexpressed manner, which devalues the effectiveness of the power of actually apologizing. Next, the over-explanation trap. We'll talk about the way excessive focus on intentions, circumstances, or justification often negates the impact of an otherwise sincere apology. There's a difference in the proper role of context versus an excuse. Over-focusing on all the reasons why the wrong happened minimizes the wrong in and of itself. You do want to provide enough context where that person understands genuinely where you're coming from, but it should never overtake the primary focus on the wrong itself. Of course, you want others to know what your intentions were, if there's any external factors or forces at play that impact the situation. But those rarely are heard by the other person as necessary to be a part of the apology. The more we can just call it how it is, not add any fluff, shoot it straight, the more effective and sincere we're going to come across. The sincerity is a reflection of the pure nature of the wrong. When we add to it, when we inflate it, when we dramatize it, when we share a bunch of context around it, it waters down the sincerity. It conflates excuses with ownership. Again, there might be genuine factors that you need to share as to why the wrong happened and where you were coming from, because that is part of the awareness of someone's thinking or behaviors that shows why they did the wrong. That is important. But if it moves into saying those things as a justification or a replacement for their apology, then that is wrong. On to the last segment, practical tools and applications, the effective apology framework. The first tool we're going to talk about is the accountability readiness assessment. This is a structured approach for honestly evaluating your current capacity for taking responsibility across different contexts. It includes questions for identifying both strengths and resistant patterns. So the way that this works is that you will look at every area of responsibility that you have: marriage, parenthood, job, health, family, friends. You want to see where you could take more responsibility or be more effective in your responsibility in each of those areas. And it's not just those areas, maybe it's different dynamics. Going back to the example with my wife, maybe it's time management or scheduling. Maybe it's emotion regulation in conflict, or how you communicate. Those are all different dynamics, contexts, and areas that you need to assess and say, where am I strong in this and where do I see resistance? Every time someone gives me feedback, I immediately get defensive. That's an area I can take more responsibility in. Every time I say I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, I'm never there on time. More responsibility in that area. I tell myself I care about my health, but I have run once in 6 months. That's another area of responsibility. Realizing where you are falling short, where you could do better, and there's no wrong place to start. Just pick one place, go for it. See where you are resisting. The word resistance is code for I'm not ready yet. You shouldn't feel ashamed for not being ready yet, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be ready. Find a way to be ready, to show up more, to be less resistant to the truth in whatever you need to face. Next, the complete apology formula. This is a comprehensive framework for crafting apologies that address all essential elements. Imagine you are told you have to write a story: beginning, middle, end, intro, main points, conclusion. That is how an apology should be framed. There should be an intro to set the stage of where you went wrong. There should be a main point section for why you went wrong, some genuine context as to what happened. And there should be a conclusion of a full ownership of that wrong and an expectation of your promise and how you're going to move forward. The way you're going to adapt this approach to different situations and relationship contexts is to reflect on where you often need to apologize, where you find yourself falling short, and write out those situations, each one as that story framework, and do it in a way that helps you make sense of the whole process. What leads me to being wrong to begin with? Could I prepare better? Could I change this circumstance to set me up for success more? What are those main points, those factors that lead to me being wrong? Then how can I make it right in a way where I have a lesser chance of repeating that issue? So taking each main area or dynamic situation you find yourself apologizing in, example, being late. What often leads you to being late? What are the main reasons within being late that contribute to that? And what does it look like to acknowledge the negative impacts of your lateness, how it affects others emotionally, mentally, relationally? Then set the expectation of how you want to move forward and your promise to be better. Taking each apology, crafting it like a story, including all essential elements that is comprehensive but is not inflated to add more than there is, to use context as a justification. Some core apology practices. The defense response management technique. This is a series of specific methods for recognizing and working with the internal resistance that often arises when accountability is needed. I'll share some approaches for different personality types and triggers. Even when you apologize, there is still resistance of not wanting to feel wrong. And you certainly have areas where you have not fully recognized you're wrong, nor are open to accountability. I mentioned different cultures see apologizing and being wrong in different ways. I'm from the South, and we have what I like to call a good girl, good guy mentality. You don't want to appear mean or rude or wrong. You want to appear nice and kind and friendly. And this creates issues because it easily over personalizes being wrong. And when I first met my wife, I had so much trouble just simply admitting I'm wrong. And she came from a culture that over normalized, almost desensitized being wrong because they so easily just said it how it was, like self-deprivation. Depending on your personality type and conditioning growing up, that will determine your triggers. If you are more extroverted and someone questions you on your ability to commit to the relationships you have, you'll probably get defensive. You will feel they're constraining your freedom to connect with people. Or let's say your personality type is that which is more cerebral. If someone tries to tell you how you've hurt them on an emotional level, you may have trouble connecting there. You may have resistance to understanding where they're coming from because you are thinking in black and white, right and wrong, instead of an understanding and empathy, an in-between. The way we approach this is to do an internal stop, an inventory of where you have resistance. While the technique before was an external one, through actions and behaviors, this is internal through beliefs and narratives. Look inside, see, when do I start feeling tense, closed off, and resistant to certain types of feedback, certain people, areas of feedback? How can you address each of those based on who you are as an individual? Again, you're just seeing where you have resistance based on who you are and addressing each of those areas in a loving, compassionate, yet accountable way. Next, the repair commitment approach. How to make concrete, specific commitments about future behavior that complement the acknowledgement of past mistakes. This is the importance of actionable follow-through versus vague promises. This is what I was getting at of how to end an apology, how to set the expectations, how to promise, how to set a future predictability in that other person's eyes of what you will do. I'm sorry that I was late to dinner. Moving forward, you can expect me to do better about being on time. You want to share the opposite of what you're apologizing for as a new way of approaching or going about a situation. It's not a vague promise. Oh, I promise to do better. That doesn't mean anything. It's, I promise to be better about being on time. Or moving forward, I will be on time more. I will let you know when I'm going to be late. Then we have navigating complex apology situations, the shared responsibility context. Let's talk about some approaches for taking appropriate accountability, even when the situation involves mutual contributions or complex dynamics. Frameworks for neither over-owning nor under-owning your part. When there's a situation where both people are responsible, you have to see where was I wrong and start with that, own up to that and share that, but also create space to hold the other person accountable. It's not going to feel fair in the sense of having the same outcome. It should be fair in that each of you are individually and uniquely owning up to your wrongs in a way that equally restores the relationship. The way you want to see it is that you would not move on from a conflict until reparations have been done in every sense of the word by each person to the full degree that is necessary. It doesn't look like a tit for tat. You don't apologize so that you can then quickly get that other person to apologize. There may be situations where you're ready to apologize and they're not. And that might feel unfair. Doesn't mean you let them off the hook, but they might need more time. Still do what is right on your end, or vice versa. Maybe that person apologizes and you're not ready. Then take the time, but take the ownership to follow up and make sure that that repair happens in full. Next, the ongoing pattern apology. Here are some techniques for apologizing effectively when addressing recurring issues rather than isolated incidents. How can you acknowledge patterns while maintaining credibility about change intentions? If you are the person doing the wrong repetitively, if I'm constantly late, it looks like saying, I'm not going to change overnight. I'm probably going to be late again, but you have my commitment to be late less often and for a less amount of time. So I'm putting some sort of accountability and growth there that is not extreme. It's not, I'll never be late again or I'll always be on time. It's progressive growth. I will be late less often, frequency, and for a lesser amount of time, the duration. It's important, if it's a recurring issue, to do the due diligence and ownership of figuring out the root cause and belief of why that's a recurring issue. A one-off is not necessarily correlated with a full belief. It's just a one-off. I was late one time. If I'm constantly late, that's a mindset I have about time, about scheduling, about other people's time, about my time, my ability to prepare and know the realistic implications of what it takes to be on time, the consequences and punishment for being late to things, how that all plays into it. You want to acknowledge the pattern and maintain the credibility about the intent to change, not through a 360 transformation, but through a genuine progressive growth, that pattern is equal to the pattern of the mistake that you're making recurrently. Conclusions and takeaways. Remember, the ability to sincerely apologize and admit when you're wrong isn't a sign of weakness, but a reflection of integrity, emotional maturity, and commitment to both truth and relationship. We talked about the psychological understanding of what it really means to trust someone, how to gain that, and how to give it. We discussed some practices and tools and how to effectively apologize. We talked about common pitfalls, the non-apology apology, over-justifying and explaining trap, and we talked about myth-busting misconceptions about not overly apologizing, how that looks like in leadership, and how the ability to apologize creates a vulnerability as a strength. Then we talked about how to effectively apologize and practice that, and then how to navigate complex apology situations. I want to challenge you this week. If a situation arises where you've contributed to a problem or made a mistake, practice implementing the complete apology formula or one of the other practices that I mentioned in segment 3, rather than defaulting to defensiveness or partial accountability. Until next time, remember that genuine apologies don't diminish your strength or authority. They demonstrate the kind of integrity and courage that create the foundation for a mature and psychologically stable life that is full of effective and connected relationships. That's it for me. See you next time.